This is a conversation with a Holocaust survivor, Laura Oberlender. Can you introduce yourself?
My name is Laura Oberlender. I am a Holocaust survivor who just turned 91. I am here today to tell you my incredible story of survival.
Why are you telling this story?
I share my story because it's important to remember the Holocaust and speak out so such a tragedy never happens again.
Now I'd like to ask you all something. Please raise your hand if you have a dog or cat. Please raise your hand if you think your dog or cat would protect you if you were in danger. I ask this question because in the story my bubby is about to tell you, a dog plays the role of a true hero. Can you tell us a little bit about your childhood?
My story begins in Tuchin, Poland, which is now Ukraine. We were a small, close-knit Jewish community. I was 7 years old and my sister Hannah was 10. We had a beautiful life in Tuchin with many aunts, uncles, and cousins. My father built a beautiful home in 1939 and ran a very successful grain business where Ukrainian farmers shopped weekly. My father frequently gave grains on credit to those that couldn't afford to buy them. One of his customers was a poor farmer named Pablo Gavasimchuk, who he frequently gave grains on credit. That was the extent of their relationship. The significance of this will come up later in my story.
What was life like for you before the war?
Life before the war was very happy. One of the few memories I have was every Friday before Shabbat, the Jewish Sabbath or day of rest, my mother would prepare a chont, a beef stew, and take it to the baker's oven to cook. When I was a child, we did not have an oven in our kitchen like all of you have today. I would wait for what seemed like forever to get back with my mother and cousins to pick up the next day for Shabbos. I can still remember the smell, so delicious, my mouth would water as we walked back to our house. When my father would come back from the synagogue, we would eat the chont before my father would take his Shabbos nap. My mother would dress my sister and I in our nicest dresses, and she would put on her beautiful hat. When my father woke up, we would go for a spazier, a walk through the park. Everyone would smile at each other, wishing each other Shabbat Shalom, a peaceful Shabbos. My sister and I would hold hands, walking in front of our parents, feeling the peace in those moments as if nothing else in the world mattered. Just the simple, quiet joy of being together with her hand in mine and everything feeling right. I felt as if was perfect and nothing could ever go wrong.
Can you explain what this photo is?
This is a photo of my father's family. All his sisters and brother, and only 4 people are here that remained, and the rest were all killed in the Holocaust.
And this is a photo of her family after the war, of who survived.
Yes.
And as you can see, the X's represent everybody that was killed. Can you tell us who were in these photos?
My father and his sister in one of them. In the other photo, my mother's sister, Suke, and her friends, and they were killed. This is my sister, and the other picture is my baba and myself and my sister and a cousin.
And can you tell us about the photo of your sister? How did you get this photo?
This photo was sent to Israel because all our photos were burned in the ghetto when the ghetto went up on fire. And my aunt in Israel, my father's sister, she must have found the picture and she sent it to us.
And so this is the only photo you have of your sister, correct?
Right.
Can you tell us about the start of the war?
In 1942, the Germans invaded Tuchin, and Jewish life changed forever. Communication was very poor. We did not telephones, let alone Facebook or Instagram. Our only way to communicate was by writing letters and sending them in the mail. We had no idea there were concentration camps and Jews were being murdered. The Ukrainians were very happy that the Germans occupied Tuchin, and within a week many Ukrainians formed a pogrom, a violent organized attack against the Jews, with one German soldier to make it look legal.
When you think back to that time, is there a moment that feels especially vivid or unforgettable?
I can still remember the Friday night that my family usually prepared for Shabbat was preparing for something far worse. This was within a week that the Germans occupied Tuchin. My father knew if he were home and they knocked on our door, he would be taken or killed. So he ran in the woods to hide. Uh, my mother, alongside my sister and I, said goodbye to my father, hoping that he would return. My mother lit the sharpest candles, her hands trembling with fear. I remember looking out the window, watching the Ukrainians walk down our street. As they passed our house, I remember the German soldier saying, "But what about this house?" Clearly, our name was not on the list, but because our house was so nice, they stopped. Within moments, I remember hearing a terrible knock on the door. I can still picture my mother running to answer it, hoping that if she answered fast enough, they did not have to wait, they would show her some mercy. When she opened the door, she was immediately beaten on her head with rifles and was thrown into the yard. My sister and I were standing at the door screaming in fear. I can still hear the blood gushing from my mother's head. Zzzz. Once my mother stopped yelling, they left her thinking she was dead and proceeded to enter our home. My sister pulled me away, and that is the last thing I remember. When I woke up, I was under a bed. I could hear my father calling my name, Luba, Luba. I tried to tell him where I was, but no words came out of my mouth. I was going in and out of consciousness for a period of time. I had no idea how my father came home or what happened to me. And I then remember waking up on the sofa with a Bible under my head. I was covered with a sheet. My father was crying while reciting the Kaddish, the Jewish prayer for when someone else passed away. My uncle told him that I was dead and that they needed to help my mother. I thought I was going to be buried alive. I was completely conscious, yet invisible to those around me. By some miracle, my family realized that I was alive. Following day, no one expected my mother or me to survive. My mother had 7 holes in her head and multiple fractures on her face. The bone over her eye was broken. I was hit badly on my head, but instead of the blood coming out, it remained in my brain and caused severe swelling, which led me be paralyzed on my right side. The swelling was so severe that I could not see or speak, but I could hear. My mother and I miraculously survived without medical intervention. While we were recovering, Pablo the farmer came to visit us. He cried when he saw the condition I was in.
While you were recovering, what was going on in Tuchin?
Between 1942 and 1943, the Germans would come to our town demanding valuables. There were a few select Jews who were responsible for collecting whatever they demanded. They always threatened to kill 50 Jews if their demands were not met. This lasted until the ghetto was formed in 1942.
When the ghetto was formed, was your family forced to move?
Once the ghetto was formed, we saw that this was the end. My parents, sister, and I went to my grandmother's house, which was in the ghetto. As we were packing to move, a new Czechoslovakian school principal arrived in town. He was searching for a home and was told that he and his wife could have any of the Jewish homes in Tuchin. He chose our home as it was one of the nicest homes in our neighborhood. He came into our house and saw my sister Hannah, who had blonde hair and blue eyes. We all knew that the Jews would be killed. He told my parents that he and his wife would keep Hannah with them as they had no children of their own. My parents said no. We moved into the ghetto and saw the chaos that was occurring. When I close my eyes, I can still picture in my mind as if I am still there. A petrified 8-year-old, my father decided we should try to escape and go to Pablo's farm for safety. We were unsuccessful and taken back to the ghetto. At this point, my parents decided that maybe Hannah could be saved. My father took her back to the house and left her with the principal and his wife. They were kind people and promised to keep her safe. My father promised Hannah that we would come back for her if we survived the war.
You've mentioned the farmer Pablo a few times. Can you tell us more about what he did for you?
Somehow Pablo heard that we were trying to escape to his farm. When my father returned to the ghetto, Pablo came with peasant clothes for my mother, my sister, and me. Unfortunately, my sister was already gone. He told my father that he would take my mother and me to his farm, posing as his wife and daughter, but he couldn't safely take my father. We left with Pablo, leaving my father behind in the ghetto.
At this point, your sister is living in your house with the principal. Did she know that you were going to Pablo's farm?
Hannah did not know that Pablo was taking us to his farm. The ghetto gates were closing the following day, so Hannah was planning to come one last time to say goodbye to the family. The gates closed sooner than expected, so my father had to escape in order to prevent Hannah from being caught. Many people were killed trying to escape, but my father was determined to try. By some miracle, he jumped over the fence and survived. He met Hannah before she left the house to come to see us. Hours later, he escaped from the ghetto. He saw the ghetto in flames. The Jews started the fire because they knew the Ukrainians were waiting for the Jews to be killed so they could collect their valuables. Many Jews managed to escape into the woods, but nearly all of them were eventually killed by the Ukrainians. My father told Hannah that he was secretly going to hide in a place beneath the steps of our house. He stayed there for 1 week, and Hannah kept him alive by bringing him a little food whenever possible. After 1 week, I told Hannah that he was leaving and would try to get to Pablo's farm to be with my mother and me.
Tell us what happened when you arrived at Pablo's farm. Did you know that the ghetto was on fire? And did you know that your father had escaped?
When my mother and I arrived at Pablo's farm, he initially hid us in the attic at home. We watched as the ghetto in flames, unaware that my father had escaped. Pablo was fearful of our lives. When my father arrived a week later, they hid us in the haystack outside on his farm. We were kept in the haystack for several weeks. There were many times the Germans came to his farm searching for Jews. They would poke long sticks into the haystack, searching for hidden Jews.
That must have been very scary for you as a young child.
Pablo had a dog named Briscoe, who would bark very loud each time the Germans would come to the farm. I was afraid that I wouldn't have enough time to lace up my shoes if the German found us, so every time I heard Briscoe barking, I would start lacing up my shoes. Seeing that this was very dangerous, Pablo moved us into the barn beneath the haystack. In the barn there was very little light, which came in between the rafters. The light was gone by 3 p.m. each day, and then there was only darkness.
Can you describe what your living conditions were like in the hole?
The space was so small that my father could not sit up straight, and if one of us wanted to move, we all had to move together. Our constant companions were mice and lice. I remember having to hold my ration of, of a piece of bread tight so that the mice would not get it. We never once changed our clothes or washed our face or hands during the time we spent there. At night, when it was dark and safe enough for my father, would take out the part that we used as our bathroom and dump it in the river.
What did you do during your time in the hole to keep busy?
During my time in hiding in the hole, my father would teach me prayers. the stories of Torah, and many Jewish songs. I can still remember the words of the song we used to sing. Al Hayam Atihon Shata Srina Kala. On the Mediterranean shore sailed a light ship. I often saw a bird flying when I looked through the rafters and would wish that I could be that bird so that I could be free.
Were you able to get food while you were in hiding?
When I looked outside between the rafters, I could see Pablo saying something to Briscoe. Briscoe would then run around the entire farm to come back to Pablo to let him know that it was safe to approach us. Only then would Pablo come and bring us the very little bit of food he could spare.
It must have been incredibly difficult for Pablo to risk not only his own life, but also the lives of his wife and children.
Pablo had a wife and 3 children. By hiding us on his farm, he endangered the lives of his family. As a mother, I can't even begin to imagine the fear his wife must have had. He knew that if we were discovered, his family would be killed. He didn't fear for his own life, only for the lives of his wife and children. He intended to keep us on his farm for only a few weeks. Every couple of months, he would tell us that he could no longer risk his family's life, and we would have to leave. He would take us out of the hiding, intending to send us away, and then he would look at me, pick me up, and cry, and he would say, "What did this little girl do to deserve to die?" He knew that we would be killed immediately upon leaving his farm. He would then make up an excuse to say that it might snow tomorrow, so let's plan for leaving next week instead. That lasted for 18 long months.
Can you tell us about these photos here?
Well, this is the barn, and Pablo is on the right, and I guess his wife and children. These pictures were taken from Yad Vashem in Israel.
So that's him and his wife on the right side. And what was his wife's name?
His wife's name was Rupka.
And here's another photo of him
Yeah,
and his wife.
right.
And was this the barn that you were hiding in?
Yes, in back of them, yes.
And how
that's
about
the
this
barn.
photo?
Yeah, that's his family, his children, and this was probably taken after the war, because his kids were younger than that.
And so, do you think that this was the dog Briscoe?
Probably not.
But you never actually got to meet or see Briscoe, did you?
No,
So you don't know what Briscoe looked like?
I didn't. This is Pablo on the right, and on the left is Pablo and his wife, and then one of the little children, and his son.
And this is probably a grandchild, so this was
Yes.
taken after the war.
Yeah, right.
So these are Pablo's children.
Yeah.
And what were their names?
Clava on the left and Gala on the right.
Do you ever think about your sister while you were hiding in the hole?
We always talked about my sister, how fortunate that she was. We thought that she was alive and living okay with the principal from Czechoslovakia. And we said, oh my God, we're so happy that she's not hiding like we were. It was a comfort for us to know that she was being taken care of. Little did we know that after only a few weeks, the principal and his wife threw her out of the house because the Germans threatened all people with death if they caught hiding a Jew. And after the war, we learned that she was heading to Pablo's farm, probably, but was killed by the Germans because a Gentile school friend shouted out that she was a Jew. We assumed that she was killed because she refused to tell the Germans where we were hiding. We don't know exactly. I often wonder if I had been in her place, would I have kept silent? It was my sister, the one that I loved more than anything, that kept my parents and me safe, even if that meant her life was taken.
You're still hiding in the hole as the war is coming to an end. Can you tell us what happened next in your story?
The last 6 weeks before liberation, the Germans made their camp on Pablo's farm and moved into the barn in which we were hiding. The soldiers were on top of the haystack, in the barn, and we were hiding underneath them. I was not 9 years old. I could hear them inhaling their cigarettes, each breath a reminder of the constant danger we faced. My father kept his hand over my mouth all day and night to prevent me from making a sound. In order to distract from any noise, Pablo convinced the Germans to bring their horses inside the barn. He also kept Briscoe outside the barn near where we were hiding.
When the war finally ended, did you leave Pablo's farm?
Finally, the war ended and the soldiers left. However, after liberation, Pablo continued to keep us in hiding because the Ukrainians were still killing Jews even though the Germans were gone and the war had ended. When we first went into hiding at Pablo's farm, my father gave Pablo my mother's gold watch. Before we left his farm after liberation, Pablo returned the watch to my father. My father begged him to keep the watch, but Pablo refused. Had we filled his house with gold, he said, to keep us, it all would have been returned. He kept us because of the wonderful, kind, selfish person that he was. From that day on, we referred to him as our God.
After you were liberated, you had no home to go back to. Where did you go?
After liberation, I was now 10 years old, and we went back to Tuchin and stayed there for 7 months. From Tuchin, we traveled to Lodz. My father got in touch with the Brit Chayal when we arrived in Lodz. The Brit Chayal were Jewish men living in Palestine who wanted to fight the war against Hitler. At the time, Palestine was under British mandate, so in order for them to fight in the war, they joined the Brit Chayal, known as the British soldiers. They succeeded in getting us Greek passports so that we could leave Poland. We headed to a displaced persons camp in Linz, Austria, which was called Wintermichel.
You had already suffered such a huge loss, and then you had to begin again in a completely new place. What do you remember about that time?
Every day I used to cry for my sister. After several months in Wintermichel, I was now 11 years old. My parents gave me the best possible gift ever, my baby brother Michael. We spent 4 years in DP camp, and in January 1949, despite desire to move to Israel, we immigrated to the United States.
Can you tell us about these photos?
This is a picture in Wintermichel. My brother was probably 6, 7 months old. My mother was holding him. And the other one is also myself.
And how old do you think you were in this photo?
Probably 11. And this is a picture from Lodz, from Poland. I was probably 10 here. And this is after we came to the United States, my brother and I, in the park. And this is a picture from the camp, Wintermichel, the DP camp, the school. And I am the third one from the right.
And do you have any friends that you kept in touch with from this photo?
I did, one of them, and unfortunately she's dead now.
But it's a blessing that you had a friend that you got to be in touch with for all these years until a couple of years ago.
Yes, it was wonderful.
What was it like starting a new life in the United States after everything you had been through?
Coming to a strange land, not knowing the language, was extremely difficult for me. We eventually came to Philadelphia when I was 14 years old. Later on, I married a Holocaust survivor, Alex, and have 3 wonderful and successful children and wonderful granddaughters.
After you came to the United States, were you ever able to speak with Pablo or his family again?
My father kept in touch with Pablo until the day Pablo died. In 1991, Pablo's 2 daughters and grandson came to visit us for several months. While I never met them before, it did not take long for us to feel like they were a family. Pablo and his wife, Luca, are amongst the many righteous Gentiles in the archives in Yad Vashem, Israel Holocaust Museum. Every morning I wake up and look at Pablo's picture and thank him for being our savior. This is a picture when they came with 2 sisters and my brother and me and the grandson. This is in Florida, in Atcat.
And I remember you telling me that when they came, they brought suitcases full of gifts just because that's how they were raised and that's who they were, and they just
Yes,
only
not
wanted
a
to give
change
to
of
other
clothes.
people. And so you had to take them to
The
the
next
mall to buy
morning,
clothes because they had
yes.
nothing for
And
themselves,
I
only
also
for
had to
you.
get a dictionary because I didn't speak the language. And I put down 20 American words, and with the dictionary, we had beautiful conversations.
That's a wonderful story that after all those years you could connect with them, even not speaking the same language.
Right.
Can you tell us whose journal this is?
This is my father's journal. He wrote that after liberation. He remembered all the names, the people that were in charge of collecting all the stuff when the Germans were occupying Tuchin. And he remembered every detail, how he was caught many times and beaten almost to death. And he wrote all that, yes.
So when you were hiding in the hole, did you have a pen and paper for him to write this down?
Nothing. We never had a paper or pen.
So that's incredible that he was able to do this after the war.
Yes.
And what language did he write this in?
Yiddish. And I think it's in Israel, and it was translated in Hebrew.
That's amazing.
Yes.
Now, if it's okay with you, I want to ask you a few questions for the audience to hear. So if you could give your audience one piece of advice, what would it be?
I would like to leave you with the following message. When you see injustice, please speak up. We all know that anti-Semitism is prevalent and is on the rise. It's important for all of us to fight hatred when we are exposed to it. All of us could even be just a little like the person who Pablo was, just a little bit selfless and kind. The world would be a more peaceful place.
What message would you give to your grandchildren, me, or great-grandchildren, about what you went through?
I want them to know how much strength came from. Never forget where you came from and never take your freedom for granted. Speak up against hatred. Treat people with kindness and hold on to your values. I went through dark times so that you could live in light. Live fully, love deeply, and never be afraid to stand up for what's right.
How did these experiences shape who you are today?
I do not take anything for granted. I appreciate my freedom and, most importantly, the love of my family.
After living through such a dark time for the Jewish people, what gave you the strength to hold on to your Jewish identity?
I went through a time when being Jewish nearly got me killed, but that made it even more important to hold on to who I am. I lost too much, my home, my sister, my childhood, but I couldn't lose my identity too. Being Jewish was part of my soul. It gave me strength when there was nothing else left. And I kept it because I wanted my children and their children to know that even in the darkest times, we didn't give up.
Now, this is a hard question, and I remember that you used to tell me when I was younger that you thought maybe the story about your sister wasn't true, and that maybe one day you'd get on a public transportation bus somewhere and you'd see her sitting there, or maybe you'd walk into a store and see your sister. If you could talk to your sister one more time, what would you say to her?
Mom and Dad thought they were protecting you. I am so sorry for everything that happened. Please know that I love you deeply and think about you all the time.
If you could give your 7-year-old self one piece of advice, what would you say? So think about you right now having gone through what you went through, and you could go all the way back in time to that scared little girl. What would you tell her?
I know you're just a young child and you're scared right now. Stay close to your parents and listen to their guidance. Trust them and believe that God will watch over you and keep you safe. You are stronger than you realize and you will get through this. And one day you will have a wonderful family of your own filled with love and joy. Thank you.
Thank you for speaking with me today. And our hope is that this will be passed around to many different children and families and schools to keep her story and the story of many others alive.
Thank you.